Thank you, Jen. Yeah, welcome, Jennifer. Thank you, everybody, for the opportunity to have a conversation with you today. So today, what we're going to do is we're going to start to talk about what a crisis-ready leader means. We're going to be focusing on leadership and in regards to what leaders can do. The wrong time to prepare for crisis is when you're in it. There are different roles. There can be a crisis-ready employee. For example, a crisis-ready employee would understand the barriers to asking for help when they are in crisis, and the crisis ready employee would understand their role potentially in advocating and being an upstander. The challenge for leaders is somewhat different because what happens with leaders, we have a perception that leaders can take care of themselves, as well as they play a critical role in facilitating the employee experience. When you hear the word psychological health and safety, many people may not clearly know what that means. So I want to spend a moment to talk about it just for a second to give you some context. So if you think about psychological health and safety, it's the following. It's how an employee feels at any moment. So if you step back and think about what does that mean? Well, when I walk into the workplace and I see some friends sitting on a table, do I feel comfortable enough to walk over and say hello? Do I feel that I would be welcomed? Do I feel that people are open to my point of view without being chastised? Do I feel comfortable to take some chances and try an innovation or an idea without worrying about the fear and the challenges of making a mistake? And if I make a mistake, will a mistake be a career-ending issue? So, in other words, it's best to say nothing, do nothing, and stay safe. You see, a culture, the North Star for organizations, is that many are looking for is to create what they use this word, psychological health and safety. However, I would like to actually think about it as a place employees want to come willingly, a place where they can thrive, grow, flourish, nourish, enjoy, and learn. It's a place where people can have purpose. Now, that's the inside ring. The outside ring is what is the commitment the employer is going to make to achieve that goal. So, without getting into a whole lot of technical detail, it's possible if I had 100 employees, every employee, when they walk into the workplace, will have different experiences on how they feel. So, for example, we could talk about a neurodivergent employee. Many of them, we have right 15 to 20% of our population are neurodivergent, and many of them don't know. It's how they filter and experience the world. Then we have an intersectional lens. So people have different experiences and they have different backgrounds. Then we have an adversity load, food insecurity and housing and all these challenges and stress. So here's the point for a crisis ready leader. Crisis ready leaders, typically every organization will have on their wall a set of values that define what good is. And most organizations say they want to create a place that employees want to come. The challenge with leadership, the evolution of leadership, is we have promoted people that technically are competent for the most part. We seldom ask leaders if they like human beings. We just promote them because they like people. No, we promote many times because people have technical competency. I'd like you to think about this in the realm of a psychological safe workplace. If the North Star is everything I said, think about that great experience of emotion. Well, that out's next ring is what is the commitment to the organization's going to do to achieve that outcome. One tactic is leadership. One role is leadership. Gallup poll will say 85% of the variance in the employee relationship will be based on the manager-employee relationship. Engagement, it has a huge predictor of if an employee actually feels valued and understands where they fit in the value chain. So a crisis ready leader understands that there are things that are happening on the outside that could bring employees to a workplace. And I'd like you to think about the adversity load of somebody who has food insecurity, has challenges perhaps home with intimate partner violence, having challenges at home, maybe just trying to figure out how to deal with a sick child, sick parent, sick somebody. But then they come to work and they may have different challenges. But if they're not in a workplace where they feel psychologically safe and comfortable, They may not raise their hand and ask for help. So the purpose of this of introduction to crisis leader is the following. And this is a thesis. You have to decide when you listen to any speaker like myself, you have to decide, is what they're saying reasonable? Is it reasonable and probable? So is it reasonable for me to make the assumption that we're in a geopolitical landscape that's unpredictable today? Is it probable that a leader's role to get that place employees want to come, that that leader has a really important role in that? See, crisis can arise from a bunch of different things, and I said to you from financial, technical, geopolitical. The challenge is today in 2025. We have come hopefully to some evolution where human beings are actually can be treated better than a photocopier. And what I mean by that, to get access to a photocopier, you need money. To get access to employees, you need money. That's called salary. A photocopier, we kind of protect the photocopier by locking the room and putting insurance for fire. For employees, we give them benefits, vacation, etc. But here's where it gets interesting. For a photocopier, what's the juice that makes a photocopier work? That's electricity. We pay extra for that. What's the juice for a workforce? It's not money. It's not benefits. It's culture. And if you think about the photocopier, some lovely human being comes every 3 weeks to 4 weeks to check how the photocopier is doing, does preventative maintenance. What do we often wait for employees? Oh, we wait till they break. We keep pushing them till the end to see. And I'm not saying you do, but I'm saying from a stereotypical, that's what many employees experience is. 60% of workforces today are languishing. So a crisis-ready leader knows that dealing with human beings, they're going to have emotions, they're going to have different needs. And the crisis-ready leaders also know that every employee will have a different perception. The challenge with this whole concept of psychological safety, it's built on the employee's view of the world. So my thesis on a crisis-ready leader, which I want to speak to you today about, is leaders must be more agile, flexible, proactive. Jim Collins in his book Good to Great around humility is going to be a giant, giant factor in today's society. Approachability. So crisis-ready leaders, I'd like you to think about this. So we want to create a workplace where we value human beings, if that's important to you. You understand that if human beings come to the workplace with purpose and feel value, they're more likely to want to do their best work each day. So that cultural impact of on it is leaders have a role in this. And if we start to think about what is a crisis-ready leader, a crisis-ready leader is someone who possesses the skills, mindset, and preparedness to navigate challenges with confidence and clarity. They understand agility. Agility means, from a simplistic perspective, and very much like the famous book of Dr. Seuss, Green Eggs and Ham, they understand the law of requisite variety. They understand that you can actually do things different ways. There's preferences and rules. Too many leaders sometimes get themselves in trouble because they get locked down on a preference. Like my father, I grew up in Prince Edward Island. My father had a preference. Dinner was at 5 o'clock. I don't know if you had that, father. Dinner wasn't at 5:05. It was at 5. It was his preference, but we took it on as a rule. But somehow I mysteriously, with my children, lost that preference. And we get into like whenever anybody can show up type of thing. And what happens is that we all need to be mindful that the world now will require more agility, more emotional intelligence. And one of the reasons that some people are struggling with understanding about emotional intelligence because it's really evolved into social intelligence. And if you don't have emotional literacy, you'll never be able to emotionally regulate. Strategic thinking basically means anticipating what could happen versus just assuming that in a myopic world, that everything that will go as a plan. Strategic thinking not only thinks about what we're going to do, but the unintended consequences of every action. So we start to go allowing them to guide their team through uncertainty and adversity. So again, you need to, when you're listening to this, to ask yourself, do you believe that there's a possibility that with all the unknowns, Jen mentioned AI. AI is a psychosocial factor. It can be something, it can be helpful to people's jobs, but for some people, it could be a fear thing where it could be their job insecurity. Any time that any psychosocial factor becomes a drain, it can move to a hazard where that has the potential to do harm. And when harm actually happens to people, that can increase their risk for mental harm, mental injury, and mental illness. But for leaders, the model you're going to see around crisis-ready leaders is around how important it is every human interaction, one interaction at a time. You see, organizations need crisis-ready leaders today because the stakes are getting higher. Severe disruptions. Leaders today, they're going to have a lot of changes. I got called yesterday. I was sitting with some dear friends in Ottawa, and I got a call yesterday about from one employer, and they were telling me they just finished talking to thousands of their employees through a survey, and they found out morale is very low. And there's not a binary fix for fixing morale. It's often a system challenge. Leadership inadequacy can lead to decreased employee morale. But leaders also have to understand that the possibility that people are coming to work discouraged and worried and distracted. You know, all the doomsday scrolling, the amount of time that people are spending actually vicariously experiencing other people's emotions. Many people haven't taken the course saying, hey, dude, or dudette or other, we suggest that you probably may not want to spend 13 hours a day looking at social media. It could have a negative impact on your outlook. And from a neuroplasticity perspective, what a lot of folks may or may not understand is you have a conscious brain and an unconscious brain. Your conscious brain, if you're not paying attention to what you're saying to yourself, then you may not be paying attention to what you're programming in your unconscious brain. And what we say and believe enough is actually becomes true. So sometimes you'll hear some leaders go, there's nothing I can do. Employees' mental health has nothing to do with me. I don't own employees' mental health. Do you expect us to fix their mental health? And the answer is you play a critical role in the employee experience that will directly impact the employee's mental health. Very much like a fish tank. Fish might have one beside me. Little guy is over there swimming around. Seems quite peaceful. He's exercising. I'm giving him food, and there seem like I think it's a he. I don't know, but it could be a she. But I call it a he. And what's interesting is that if I don't pay attention to the water and it goes bad, that poor little fish, regardless of its eating and swimming, will not make it. Leaders need to understand what a crisis-ready leader also understands the environment has a big part of it. There's lacks of trust, organizational reputation of do we actually care? You go up to the average employee and ask the average employee, do you believe my employer cares about my well-being? And then find out what they say. Well, we can't actually make people believe things. They actually feel it, going back to that full center part. So identity and focus on what you control. The reality is a leader is a big responsibility, but they can't control what's happening outside in the world. They can have some influence on how we digest and process and navigate what we have in front of us today. It's crucial for leaders to identify the elements they can control. The focus ensuring that they have resources allocated and what they're actually prepared to do. Just about having a conversation like today is a goal of these types of webinars, awareness. Awareness provides the opportunity to increase your curiosity for you to decide to do something more to develop the knowledge and skills. The biggest challenge with adult learning today is we're confusing information with learning. Information is an opportunity, doesn't equal learning. Attending a 1 hour workshop doesn't mean you've learned anything. It means you actually attended a 1 hour workshop. What will tell us if you learned anything is 3 months down the road is the habits you practiced and mastered, and you're doing unconsciously. So if learning to understand when our brain says, I have no control, nothing I can do, is learning how to say, no, this is this is what's in my control, and what's not in my control. What's always in leaders' control is how they respond. The clarity helps them make informed decisions. It takes a lot for us to stay calm. I practiced for nearly 40 years. Unfortunately, I've seen a lot of bad things. I just had a client this week call me at 7 o'clock in the morning. I was downstairs with my partner, Sophie, and they told me to call me, said, Bill, and they were in tears with CHRO, and they called me to tell me this is the leader that one of their employees were murdered the night before, an HR professional. Those are the kinds of calls I've got my entire life. Now, if I actually have not prepared myself for the possibility that I'm going to get calls at the most inconvenient times, and even when I'm tired, all I can control, I can't make her feel, but there's not a damn thing I can say that can make them feel better. But what I can do is be present and listen and not take on the role that it's mine to fix. What a privilege when someone comes to you with a problem versus a burden. And many of us see people's problems as a burden that we have to fix because it's in our way. Crisis leaders understand that even the most prepared leader may need assistance. That's why all of you, if you work in a large organization or a small organization, I encourage you to write the following down. Does my EAP program have a manager support line? And if so, have I ever called it and not had a conversation about one of my employees? And if I haven't, do it tomorrow. Learn that you have a resource and you have networks, and make sure you understand that every leader does not have to be a genie. You don't have to have all the answers. And if your arrogance is blinding you from it, that's the problem. Our own confidence and our own ability is that every one of us have limitations and none of us are perfect. And when we can get more humility and accept we don't have to have all the answers, it's great to have a point of view. So what we're going to ask you in this little frame now is just take a moment and say, okay, assess your crisis readiness. And what's going to happen is this will be, you're going to get this PowerPoint and a PDF afterwards too. So you can just have a tool to kind of navigate. So don't be overly concerned if my ADHD thing, I go a little too fast for you. But self-assessment helps us start where we're at. Here's how you know you're not doing a self-assessment. If I give you a question and you spend a minute or two, you're not doing a self-reflection as much as you're doing an analysis of what you think will look best for you. What I'd like you to do when you answer these, allow your gut to respond quickly. To be able to start to find out your own areas where you think you could be, identify a gap. And the whole goal of this is not right or wrong. Everybody can learn. I mean, I was interesting. I teach this stuff, and sometimes I could, I sometimes can be dated on something that I learned 40 years ago that I forgot that they changed the word, and someone will correct me. Being open to realize that every day is an opportunity to get something more. But all this is ask yourself, crisis ready letter, your confidence. This is a confidence. So number one, your ability to prioritize information gathering. How confident are you that you get the facts versus the information and make opinion? See, I can tell a lot about a lot of leaders that when I was a chief of staff and a COO for many years, I used to know the leaders that got themselves in trouble because a little bit of information they started to act on and started to make decisions without slowing down and getting all the available facts. How effective do you collect and assess relevant information before you make a decision? Kepner and Trigo wrote a book in the 1960s early called The Rational Manager. Every senior CEO I've ever seen will have this book on their desk called Problem Solving and Decision Making are two different skill sets. So gathering your information is identifying what's going on to help you look at what the risk level is. A hazard is a probability. A risk is actually something harm is happening. And so if you start to say there's probability or there is harm happening, then it increases your importance for you. It's kind of like saying, it's like someone sends you a picture of, smoke versus you smell smoke. Well, you might first say, where's that picture from? They might tell you, oh, that's 5 years ago with my cottage. But if you start to smell smoke and you see smoke, then you know smoke, and you verify where it's from, it's just getting your clarify your communication, psychological safety. I'm finding from doing this quite often that we're still not clear what psychological safe culture is. Again, think of the center spoke. That's how employees feel. Human beings are dependent as social creatures on their experience in their environment. So how they feel, their level of comfort, confidence, purpose, valued. The next level is what is the obligation the employer has to help create that. And one of the obligations I'm hoping again is that you think about that as your PHS program. What are you committed to do? Well, we're committed to train leaders as one tactic, one action item. Let's make sure we have leaders who understand how to communicate and understand how to open up communication. And psych safe leaders understand there will be discourse. Employees are agitated or fearful or a trauma informed response. They might get angry, short, triggered, but not make it about them. Become curious that something's going on. That gets to point number three. How well do you manage your own emotions under pressure? And are you a reactive person? Do people know to don't bring anything to this manager or leader because they'll get mad? See, if you have those three things, tips for staying calm under pressure, I thought I'd just take a quick sidebar. The only one that we know in the literature that works to suppress your sympathetic nervous system, to get you to move to your parasympathetic nervous system, the only thing we know is breathing, oxygen. Get fresh air, go for a walk. Human beings are moving bipedal Homo sapiens when we're moving in air. If you're under pressure and you need to make a response, sometimes you want your emotional brain to slow down so your conscious brain can catch up. When you get under a lot of stress, there's a part of your brain called the anterior cingulate cortex. So think about that. Your hippocampus in your midbrain with your amygdala, that's your fight or flight. But think about this decision-making part of my brain will be negatively influenced under pressure when I feel overwhelmed. So if I need to slow down my nervous system so my brain can catch up so I can get perspective. So staying under calm, practicing breathing is really important. The foundation of micro skills for me in these situations is where I feel I get the facts, I need to stay calm. That gives me an opportunity for me to be able to start to lean into some micro skills. Now, these micro skills, when I go through these, what I find fascinating is if I read something, empowered decision making, and someone goes, yeah, I know how to do that. Okay, but that's done maybe here. But if you read up what it says, the following 11 micro skills are essential for leaders effective navigate volatility, uncertainty, complexity, ambiguity, meaning the stakes are high. And we know based on Bowers and Bremner's research and others, learning is not actually doesn't always guarantee a transfer to different emotional states. So when you're calm by yourself, you might have a different set of decision-making skills than when you're up here with a lot of stimuli, pressure, someone yelling and screaming, and talking. So it's important for us to be mindful when we start thinking about empowered decision making, enable informed choices under pressure. Now, some of us, and I catch myself sometimes do it. I'll be honest with you. It's a part of me. I'm the kid who grew up in a foster home and I was adopted, and I have parts of my old brain. We all have a story, so I'm not trying to say mine's any different, but I have this insecurity piece of me that's still there. And sometimes when I'm tired or stressed, Eeyore comes out, I call him, and I try to be half full guy. But when I start to go to more negative and hopeless, People around me know, so they'll tell me go for a walk, clear your head because you're in my like Soph would say, you're being Eeyore, go for a walk. Come back, reinvent yourself would be the line at that moment in time. Because what happens is that in the absence of hope, human beings have nothing. We need leaders to be firm and steady, and they need to be the brokers of hope and the brokers of a possibility that we'll be able to find something. Now, here's the key. This is a really important part. Crisis-ready leaders understand the importance to build a team so we can learn to take care of each other under pressure. That trust is the norm, that you're approachable, that and this is where a lot of new leaders sometimes struggle. They get confused the difference between being a friend and being a leader and understand what respect is. You see, my personal trainer is 35 years old, and I tell this story, if you've ever heard me speak before, is I don't really like them. And we have a problem right now, and it's unresolved. I've been working with them for about the last 4 years. I'll share what the issue is with them. I'm quite comfortable that I can stop at 8 reps. They want to go to 12 reps. Now they have blended this damn thing where we're going to do everything for 40 seconds. And I think it's bloody ridiculous because I'm okay after about 15. Leaders need to understand that a part of their job is a morphogenetic field is creating growth, helping people move beyond what they believe is possible, like a coach. But it doesn't always have to be comfortable. So you can really be a really great leader and things aren't always comfortable. But it's being respectful and understanding that that's where, so you delay that foundation. Why am I saying that? Because that contributes to the center of creating a place where someone can feel safe to raise their hand. But more importantly, what a crisis-ready leader really wants is early intervention when someone's in challenge. They feel that they can come to their leader or their peers to ask for support. In Canada, 50% of people under mental health stress still don't ask for help. We don't have mental health parity. And so it's important to do that. Support resiliency, promoting that. But resiliency is not done by a vitamin 12 shot. And then there's another program I do is resiliency is a team sport. It's not individual. Every human being to thrive needs caring. You need people around you. You need an environment that actually is interested in your success. Crisis leaders, ready leaders know that they play an important role. So if you start to think about it, a couple of micro skills to help you, and then we'll take some questions probably in about 10 minutes. Because what we want to do is get you thinking about, okay, so what is this about? Let's step back again. Assumption number one. Do you believe that the world is having lots of challenges? Do you believe that we have volatility and there's things to be concerned about? Money, geopolitical, politics, finance, food. Yes. Most will say yes. Can't speak for you. And then as a leader, we have a role in helping create the values of the organization and creating a culture where people want to have. That's some might say, the old school people will say that's that motherhood and apple pie stuff. That's actually the fuel that why people come. That's the electricity for an organization. How that happens, the program leaders are a critical part of impacting the employee experience. So the micro skills that we can get really, really good at is a crisis-ready leader gets really good at practicing getting the facts before they react. Someone comes to me and says, I worked with a couple of CEOs, and they used to say, whoever gets the CEO first gets to run the narrative. Meaning I go to Jennifer, and I go to Jennifer's a CEO, and I go, hey, Jennifer, Bobby backed the car up and smashed it all to hell. And Jennifer starts believing that right away. And then Fred comes up to Jennifer and goes, yeah, so it's interesting, Jim had banged the car up, but Bobby didn't know the car was banged up. So now we're blamed. Now she has another set of facts. But what happens is instead of taking the one story to the bank, is validate that. Take time to analyze before knee jerking. Establish reliable process or fact checking. You're going to get what I call, and this again is not meant to be mature, uh, pejorative sort, you're going to know which people in the team are your what I call your steady hands. And they can give you other perceptions. You're going to have know the people that you're still working on to try to get them a little like relax a little bit. I just did a meeting before this and people were getting, a little bit uptight about something else. And I go, okay, let's just kind of slow it down now. Let's just kind of slow this down a bit. Let's kind of go through this. What's hard, what's not. Now, microscope two, I talked a little bit about emotional intelligence, and I think it's really critical. I also like to make sure I've not seen anyone being effective at the five levels of emotional intelligence if they can't regulate their emotions. And regulating your emotions is understanding that you're going to get unpleasant emotions and you can't do anything. You can't put yourself in a bubble. That's why meditation is so helpful if you ever do it. Meditation really helps people get a perspective. The thoughts will come and go. But what happens is that your automatic emotions you don't choose. You get to choose how to react to them. The same thing as the automatic thoughts that come with those emotions. You get to choose. But through neuroplasticity, what fires together wires together, and that can create your perception. Understand, as Daniel Kahneman won a Nobel Peace Prize for, human beings are thinking error machines. Many human beings get caught in system one thinking, and the biggest challenge with many human beings is they actually think they're right versus starting with the possibility I might be wrong. That's not promoting insecurity. It's promoting I might be wrong because I may not have all the facts. Before I lock on this, I'm going to get the facts. But understand that if I stay calm, I'm going to be less reactive. Emotional regulation is a great skill. Crisis-ready leaders know that they need to have the mask on first before they deal with other people. Active listening. See, there's hearing and there's listening. Lots of leaders can do this and they nod their head, but they might be engaged in what's called metacognition. While they're nodding their head, they're thinking about what they want to say. Uh, Crisis-ready leader actually builds fostering through listening by becoming curious about the words and the intention and the meaning, and they also know that their brain might have a cognitive preference. For example, if I'm an analytical leader and I like everything by numbers and very specific, and the person that's talking to me is more intuitive and they more go by how they feel, I have to be open to the possibility that how they're going to communicate a story may be more nuanced than how I'd like get me the facts one, two, three. So we need to show interest that other people can actually think and behave differently using paraphrasing, sorry, summarizing and clarifying questions to ensure you understand. And here's your word for the day. Here's your big word for the day. Their referential frame of reference. What the heck does that mean? Think of it more simplistic. It's their camera. You have a camera how you see the world. They have a camera how they see the world. Your job when you're listening to someone is not to see the world through your camera, but to become curious of how they're seeing the world. And that can help you with your emotional regulation. So a crisis-ready leader understands that I might take 30 seconds. If I asked all of you right now, if we had time to pause, check to make sure your cardiovascular can do it. I said, hold your breath for 2 minutes if you can. Well, there's going to be very few of you can do that. But if you did do it, and it was a personal best the first time you did, I can pretty much guarantee you it would be like equivalent of doing a plank for a minute if you've never done a plank. The last 20 seconds is extremely hard. The point being is it feels like a long time. Give human beings 2 minutes to 3 minutes of calm and let them tell their story. A lot of words can fly back and forth in 2 to 3 minutes. Skill four, empathy response. You have two types of empathy that most human beings may or may not know. You have emotional empathy and you have cognitive empathy. Emotional empathy is kind of the equivalent to when you're watching a movie and you're seeing a scene and you're seeing emotions and you start feeling it and you might start finding yourself cryy or teary or joyful or not. That means through mirror neurons, you actually can actually feel their emotion. Some people are really, and what happens is they're very in tune with how someone else is feeling. So they get it. They go, wow, this person, I can feel they have a lot of emotion. That's that affect empathy. Cognitive empathy is you need to kind of go through your brain and say, okay, this is kind of like when, when Sarah fell off the bike and yeah, you're looking for something relatable so you can try to understand how they must be feeling. You know, there's not a good or a bad, but you'll naturally have a preference whether you're more cognitive, some people might say Spock-like, and some people make more emotional. They're both are okay. But you want to acknowledge that the team member has empathy, regardless of how you get to it. But just because what happens for some leaders, they miss the opportunity of feeling it. And I'm not saying I'm not talking about compassion. I'm not talking about any of that. I'm just talking about understanding that an empathetic response understands that someone's having some emotions. Really, empathy is suspending judgment and being aware of their experience. Providing feedback. This is a lost art for many people. Provide constructive feedback. I talk to a lot of people about what is constructive feedback. Constructive feedback is not necessarily what a person's doing wrong. Constructive feedback is an opportunity for how a person can get a different path, but keeping in mind with agility. Your constructive feedback when you're started could be create the opportunity for brainstorming. Where I see leaders who do feedback, they start and they try to give them a path, then that fires off an idea on the person they're giving it to, and they say, yeah, that could be helpful. And they want to go this way, and the leader keeps hammering, you're not listening because they want their preference. See, constructive feedback is about promoting growth to achieve the outcome. And if you are going to be giving feedback, it's often sometimes to check state to start with, okay, what am I enjoying about? And then getting permission for it. When I want to give someone critical feedback, I might come up to them. I do this with my direct boards. I have something I'd like to talk to you about, something I think we can do differently. Would now be a good time? And they'll go, yeah, okay. And I'll say, great. And if they do, and I'll say, okay, here's what I really appreciate about your approach to this. Here's what I'd like to suggest for your consideration that we could do differently. And then the positive feedback is that, but I know we've had these kind of conversations before. I'd like you to consider it, take some of you have a bit different idea, because you want to empower them to say, hey, you might have a better idea than even what I have an idea. So then they feel like they're a part of it, they're not a victim of it. So creating an environment where feedback and perspective is it. But if they really respect you and you've built trust with them, they'll understand your feedback's not about hurting. It's about evolving. It's about helping them move forward. Another one is coaching skills. I believe coaching skills are critically important for crisis-ready leaders. Guide teams and members in learning how to develop coaching skills. We're going to be creating a new micro certificate because we're getting a lot of requests on folks. I'll tell you how old I am. I actually was around when Thomas Leonard invented coaching. That's how old I am. I knew Thomas when I lived in North Carolina. So I was probably, I don't know, member 50 or 100 or something, the International Coaching Federation. That's how old I am. Coaching is a very powerful skill. It can be really, really, really empowering for people because it can teach people how to help people to tap into their own capacity to learn to believe in themselves and validate. Coaching's not about telling. Coaching is about creating curiosity and being a trusted hand to support and move forward. Learning how to do a coaching conversation for leaders can be a great thing because what happens is it takes the pressure off of you and builds a partnership. Conflict resolution. We are spending a lot of time in conflict resolution. We, in fact, have another training called Restore that's an evidence-based 2-day training that's actually focused on emotional part of conflict. We don't often talk about healing the emotional part. Restoring and conflict resolution is different than restorative justice. They're both important. But conflict resolution for leaders to understand based off on research out of Google and Amy Edmiston and other great minds and Clark came up that there's a high probability that employees will in times, challenging times, have conflict. All conflict is both healthy and unhealthy is the common ground is there's a different in perception of what is actually expected or what is right or a different view or lens. So conflict doesn't necessarily have to be a negative thing, but unfortunately, many people think conflict's bad. Conflict is something that leaders, the quicker they can lean into conflict and differences and ambivalence, maintaining teams through conflict is really important, learning how to deal with that. Crisis readiness skills. We'll talk more about that. But what I'm be talking when I talk about a crisis ready leader versus getting in all the tactics of crisis intervention, crisis ready leaders, by their presence, they can create a common force to help people come to them comfortably to be able to move towards support systems. But I train also leaders in crisis readiness skills, which I'll talk about in a second, is how to plan for the unexpected, how to deal with a specific crisis situation, how to actually help a person, basically humans helping humans to de-escalate crisis and risk and navigating employee crisis. It's a skill set. All of these are skills. Flexibility, we talked about agility earlier, adapt leadership approach, learning approach, open to ideas and suggestions. Here's how you know if you're maturing as a leader. When you have a meeting, who speaks first and why? And do you set the agenda or do you have any ability for people to actually add points of view? And do you have the energy? That's important. Do you have the energy for this? Then there's collaboration. That's all the ideas don't have to come from one person. Crisis ready leaders are open to the ability that, the sum of the parts, the team as a whole will have more horsepower. If I have a team of 12 people, we're smarter with 12 than just by me because they have all the different lenses, experiences to tap into. Crisis ready leaders are constantly working with their teams to create that place where people work together. Maximize technology. There's going to be a lot of advancements in technology, and utilizing AI and data analytics can help with informed decisions. And we're using more technology to pay attention to how employees feel, how their batteries charge, how do they have time to actually feel that they get the work done? What percent of the time are they spending ad hoc work, project work, plan work? Do they feel they have the resources? Do they feel we've provided clear role clarity? Support strategy, again, because we're trying to unload that adversity load. So I'm going to go through a couple of quick things, and then I'm not going to have time to go through it all, but I'm going to just make a point that you have this handout, and this is just meant to be as you're walking away and say, okay, Bill, all this stuff, what do I want to master? What are some of the daily actions, because you're going to have different things that are going to be happening to help people. So, and there's going to be different types of crises that are going to happen. They could be in the workplace. It could be mini crisis where it could be a shift change to changes in leadership could medium, or it could be, someone does self-harm. Things that you can do to help yourself get ready. And these are just 12 quick tips. And these are meant to be closers, and you're meant to give you the PDF so you can sit with them. Post this talk. And now I'm just going to scan them now. 12 actions. Prepare your team for crisis. The wrong time to prepare. Are we prepared for crisis? Do we have a crisis plan? Do I embrace curiosity? Do I get lots of people talking? And do we feel comfortable even when we're calm? to be curious. Because if we don't do it when we're calm, we're certainly not going to do it under pressure. Do we promote conversation when we're calm? Do we should allow ideas to happen here? But under pressure, do I have a tendency to try to be a command and control more? Psychological safety. It doesn't matter what you think as a leader. It matters what your collective thinks. This is a workplace where not 65% of the employees feel safe. That's good enough. The other 35%, well, that's too bad. Really, if you think about human beings, it's very much like what is good, what's enough? It's kind of like, do we want people to harass and bully each other? The answer will always be no. No tolerance. Well, we want 100% of people to feel comfortable. And it'll be hard because human beings have these things called perceptions and point of view and personalities and views. And, sometimes people have their own struggles and they may not want to get along with other people. And that's their choice. We have to create those conditions, allow people to self-sort with dignity. We don't have to judge them. Creating a learning mindset. Like my trainer, psychological safe workplaces aren't comfortable all the time. Role model accountability, create a standard. You don't have two sets of rules. Those are things that are going to build that trust. Build strong networks among your teams, resources, role model resilience, and take care of yourself. Lead with confidence. Like, does your goals change, priorities change every week, or are you consistent? Why people like leaders that are decisive and focused is because they stay pretty on point. A couple more, and then we'll close up and take questions. Stay accessible. That's critical, so they come to you. Hard for some, as I shared a story about, understand, I know my own trigger. When I get a little bit negative and become Eeyore, it's because my battery's low. I need to get my battery up a little bit and realize that I can only control what I can control. And human beings, it's not about perfection. It's about the journey of excellence, which is a lifetime. Acknowledge employee strengths and understand that some people under pressure do better than others. But someone that's fearful under pressure doesn't mean they're weak or bad. They just may not have got those experiences yet. So closing thought, adaptability is important for crisis-ready leaders. Preparedness, but more importantly, what the anchor is, a crisis-ready leader when you walk away this. Are we a crisis-ready workplace? Do we have the skills internally to deal with employee crisis? I agree, intimate partner violence, anger, suicide, mental health issues. Do we know what to do? I mean, we don't want to think about it, but the thing that happened in Minnesota where a male took a sledgehammer in a workplace in a manufacturing environment to a 20-year-old female and killed him. And there were signs and triggers that the person didn't like them. But no one was an upstander. You can't just tell people be an upstander. We need to create the culture for it. So when you get this, you'll have an opportunity to get a free little ebook for yourselves, as well as there's a program we have called Crisis Ready that provides you insights on how to become a crisis ready interventionist. And hopefully Jennifer and I will talk more about that with time to come. But with that, let's see if thank you for attending and see if there's any questions or anything out there that anybody would like to take. I'm going to turn this off, Jen, so we can.
Yes. All right. Thank you, Bill. Oh my gosh, such great information here. Wow, you had covered a lot of the micro skills. How do we master these? Getting the facts before reacting. I think that's so key. Everyone loves to just fly off the handle. They hear one thing and actually not checking. It's like one practice I do for myself is it's tough through email, it's tough through text to get the connotation of what people are saying or how they're expressing things. I actually delay. I might not respond right away because I want to think about it. I want to process it. Maybe something happened that day that they're writing that email or so forth or question it. So I think taking that time is super important. And the active listening, emotional regulation, these are all great topics. So there are some questions here in the chat. Let's go with the first one. What kind of system should a company practice to be proactive about gauging conflict in their company?
Really, really good question. One of the things that I do in many organizations is we'll look at conflict on what some of the root cause of it is.
Mm,
A lot of the root cause of conflict, and with Thompson, we wrote an article a few years ago on the continuum, the conflict continuum, all the way from where people can be from rudeness all the way up to workplace violence, bullying, harassment. Incivility is that I believe is something that employers are not spending enough time talking about. Incivility is rudeness and it's become socially acceptable. Like Jennifer
mm,
just mentioned about emails, etiquette around response time, how people actually talk to each other, how people actually share information with each other.
mhm,
So, what rudeness is, and why it's a very powerful one, the antecedent, because rudeness is subjective,
mm,
how someone feels they have been wronged against their values. And when someone feels they have been wronged, that can create two types of conflict. It can cause what's called unresolved conflict, meaning that I'm upset with Jennifer. Unfortunately, I never gave her the gift to tell her I was upset.
mhm.
I do, I go around and start babbling about Jennifer.
Yeah.
And then I try to recruit people that Jennifer's this bad person.
Mhm,
Or where that's covert conflict. Overt is where that I might be passive aggressive. Well, I stop inviting Jennifer. I don't tell Jennifer about the pizza party. So I'm trying to get back. It's that eye for an eye.
yeah.
Or overt, healthy conflict is where I can come up to someone and say, Jennifer, when you did that, I felt this.
Mm,
What was your intention?
yes.
And often people are mortified because a lot of people confuse intention with impact. It doesn't matter if Jennifer was trying to be polite. So I start to get to answer the question very specifically. We do a little work around trying to get folks. Let's get a baseline of something comfortable that many people haven't talked about is civility
Mm,
about what they experience and what are they doing. That's rude. And see if
mm,
they own their behavior. Because conflict resolution requires people owning their behavior, the possibility that I might have created the conflict and I have a role in fixing it.
mm. That's good. Civility. I like it. Another question, any pointers from your experience to balance team concerns so that it doesn't fester a negative feedback loop internally?
Yeah, that's a great question.
Mm,
So when we do a model called team coaching, and one of the things, there was a book, and try to remember it in a minute, but we talked to great, highly dysfunctional teams. And it talked about different levels of highly dysfunctional teams. And one of the biggest things for dysfunctional teams is around trust, meaning the trust that we can air our laundry, the trust we can come to an agreement, and the trust that we can leave it and park our differences here.
mm,
Someone else not satisfied that they didn't get their way 100%.
mm,
So trust requires teams to realize that conflict resolution in high performing teams, people realize to become a high performing team member doesn't mean everything's always going to be my way.
right.
Okay. And so for example, I coached university football for 10 years. If I told you a number of times where I have a running back and a quarterback mad about something,
Yep.
what will happen is they both think they're right.
Hmm.
But there's a possibility sometimes two people can actually be right, but not be right, because that means they're individually focused versus team focused.
Team focused. Yeah. No, that's good. And it might not just be right for now. You know what I mean? Maybe your idea is right later or at a different timing. The timing might not be correct, right?
So wise. Yes, it's sometimes it's actually it's circumstances too.
And don't take it personal. Like I think that's a big key, I guess, to the emotional aspect to that. It's not always a personal.
Yes.
One more question here. Any useful AI prompts you can shed some light into that will support the management of different scenarios at all? It would be very useful to have some for something like the major crisis example you outlined during the session.
Well, what I'd like you to do, because I'd need more context to the question and we have more time.
Mhm.
What I'd ask you to do is if you went and took a look at the crisis ready workplace and look at the different modules we're doing. And then you could look at some of the articles we did in OHS magazine. We've done 50 articles on 50 different types of crisis.
Right.
Each one of them are written as a microscope,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so what you would, so the context is the model we teach in Crisis Ready is to give people a decision tree, a six-step decision tree of how to deal with each type of crisis based on an evidence-based model that's been proven in the literature. But what more importantly is the biggest prompt for you may be to step back and say to yourself, to explore the around like explore, explore, research, frame, and share all of the relevant crisis ready management plan frameworks out there, something on that idea.
Mm-hmm.
Get a big box because what I want to make sure you're clear of, crisis management readiness could actually build in your disaster planning,
Mm-hmm.
IT stuff, your support systems for people in crisis,
Mm-hmm.
critical incident stress resources, access to EAP, community resources, understanding what's out there for shelters for people that are exploring intimate partner violence. And more importantly, you have to also understand the legislation because most provinces, if it's intimate partner violence, there's entitled a certain amount of leave days.
Right.
Your whole the crisis management preparedness. We wrote an article, if you Google it, crisis ready policies, and put my name in Google, crisis ready policies. There's an article online how to write a crisis ready policy.
Very good. Wonderful. Okay, so do one more question. Let's see I would say, what are the first actions maybe that a leader should take in the immediate aftermath of a crisis? What are a couple of things, or a couple of points that leaders could take?
It's really great. It's a really good question. So I'm gonna answer two ways. Step one is a part of your crisis readiness is post-crisis approach. So
Mm,
let's say, for example, if we have an employee that's death by suicide, how do we support that post the workforce? Let's not actually try to figure it out during the time.
mm,
So understanding there are Mental Health Commission of Canada, for example, there's a free online brief that we help to contribute with on a post-crisis. Disability management, when someone has a severe incident in the workplace, got hurt, and they go off and get their treatment, they still come back to the workplace. There might be some, okay, how do we help stabilize the team because it's post-incident, but there's a return to work. All of that stuff is all done up front in your contingency planning.
mm,
Okay. But the most important thing is the fact that you asked the question, there are probably two or three things, types of situations, like if you're in a manufacturing environment and someone gets hurt, what do we do post-crisis? Well, we might want to make sure we have some grief counselors in or trauma counselors, and how do
yeah.
we get them there? And then do we give employees just one day, or do we believe that people might be delayed onset and we need to give people time? Maybe it's 2 weeks down the road it triggers that.
Mm,
So how are we going to support employees? Because when we ignore it, it doesn't go away.
yeah.
Talking about it doesn't make it bigger. It just creates the opportunity for people to be human.
Mm, very good. Well, this is our hour. Oh my gosh, it flew by.
Thank you.
I think Dr. Bill Howard and FPSC were looking to some programming to really help our leaders become crisis ready. I don't know, Bill, if you want to talk about your program a little bit before we close up.
Sure, 100%. So we have created a new accredited training called Crisis Ready Interventionists. And you can go to www.crisisready.ca. We just finished having a cohort of 50 people just got trained. And what we do, it's a 2-day training. We break it up into 4 blocks, so people can do it by 3-hour blocks. That's what we typically do when we do it online. We can do it in person. We're going to have an online version of it as well. But the goal of it is to help leaders develop a crisis-ready interventionist model and then give them step one is understanding how to define what's happening. Two, define what their role is in this. We want to promote upstanding behavior, de-escalation, not getting yourself into stress. And then point three is how to deal with all these things. And real quickly, duty to inquire.
Mhm.
Leaders don't know they have that obligation. A crisis-ready interventionist could support a leader to understand how to do duty to inquire based on their human rights. Crisis interventions could help de-escalate someone having a mental health crisis in the workplace, or impairment, or dealing with an angry employee, or verbal abuse. All the things that happen, and leaders somehow mysteriously are supposed to know what to do in all these different situations.
Yeah.
That's a quick overview.
Sounds great. We're excited about it. Not necessarily about having crisis, but we're excited about the skills development of our people and our leaders in our food manufacturing sector and industry. So thank you so much. Thank you to everybody for attending. Look out for your email with the presentation. You're also going to receive your certificates and a digital badge for attending the webinar. And any other questions, just email us, let us know, and have a great rest of your afternoon. Thank
Thanks
you.
very much. Have a peaceful day, everybody. Bye-bye.
Sure.